This week's Inside the Huddle is sponsored by Rabel's Auto Service. Service as it ought to be. They provide quality parts and service every time. They're located at 1610 Salina Road in St. Mary's, or you can call them at 419-394-1624 for your auto service needs.
Hey readers and followers, this is Jake Dowling from the Evening Leader. We are in week 10 of the Inside the Huddle preview. I am with Seth Kinker from the Minster Community Post. And our videos are going to be a little bit shorter this week. We only have one team left in the playoffs, and that's the New Bremen Cardinals. St. Mary's were ousted last week against Bellbrook, and then Minster was ousted last week against Adenia. So just to kind of do, what we'll do is we'll do a recap. I'll do a recap of St. Mary's, and then we'll also go then to New Bremen, the Fort Loramie game in the Division 7, Region 28 quarter or semifinal in Fort Loramie. So St. Mary's lost last week 44-14 to Bellbrook. Bellbrook is the number 2 state-ranked team, top-seeded team in Region 12. Good season by St. Mary's. They finished 6-3. And one thing that I've always kind of gone back to and talked about weeks either on here or through print is they've just been a resilient football team from week 1 when they played against Bath. A much improved team, but a team that St. Mary's should beat, and they were scoreless in that first half, and then come out and blow them out. Second half, 27-7. The next week when they played Wapakoneta, you know, that storyline from the last year where they both went into overtime, and then Wapakoneta used Evan Keck to win that game in overtime. St. Mary's was able to flip the script there and have Aiden Hinkle run the rest of the way in overtime to beat Wapakoneta. Against OG and Van Wert, 2 really good offenses, two teams that passed the ball really well, which St. Mary struggles against pass. They held up their own, forced double overtime against Ottawa Glandorf, and then obviously lost just by 6 points to Van Wert. And in both games, they had an opportunity to win those games down in the final minute or final seconds. Come back and win against Shawnee in bad field conditions with a go-ahead field goal. Get 2 easy wins against Salina and Greenville, and then have that that overtime win against Franklin, at 6-0 win. So all season long, they've been resilient, been able to come back. Coach Doug Fry said, not an overly talented team, but they showed a lot of character. That's one thing that will kind of stick out for St. Mary's this year. So end their season 6-3. They lose, I believe they lose 15 seniors, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see what they have next year. A lot of good talent coming up. Minster, their season's not quite over. Their season in terms of postseason is over. When they lost to Adenia last week, but they do play Shawnee, another Western Buckeye Lake foe, at home on Friday, 7 p.m. So we'll do a recap then of the Wildcats their season when they are completely done. So New Bremen, Fort Loramie, like I said, it's the Region 28 semifinal. Really, really good matchup. These teams are like 6 miles apart. Last week, New Bremen beat St.
Henry.
Yep. Another MAC foe. That was a slow start for them in the first half there. Down, it was 7-0 at the end of the first half, I think. Yeah. And then they come out and they blow out St. Henry.
Business.
So, yeah. And then Fort Loramie, their only loss this year was to Tri-Village. They're out of the Cross-County Conference. Tri-Village beat them earlier in the season for their only loss, but then Tri-Village loses 14-12 to Riverside, who plays top-seeded Marion Local in the region, the other side of the bracket on Region 28 playoff bracket. So what does it look like this week for a really good matchup between those two teams?
Yeah, so this is 2 of our the Community Post's local teams. So I've been kind of following Fort Loramie all season long as well, and I'm pretty excited about this matchup just because the Cross County Conference, they've kind of rolled through it. Even though with that loss to Tri-Village, like you mentioned, and the crossover County Conference's championship match. But
that's a lot of seats. That's a tongue twister.
Right, exactly. But besides that, they've looked like a dominant team. They've just been blowing. They gave up 60 points in that game, but I think they've only given up 80 points all season. So that's 20 other points between the rest of their games combined, which is very impressive. Their first, when you look at their opponent in New Bremen, they're 6-2. Their New Bremen's averaging, I think, 29 points a game. They're only giving up 10. So it's kind of two teams that kind of hang their hat on defense, and at the same time they've shown they can score points on offense. Fort Loramie, kind of in addressing the run game, I talked to head coach Spencer Wells the other day, and we've talked about New Bremen's run game all season. They've got Mitchell Hayes, a guy who can kind of do it both. He can run the ball and he can pass. He's a very good dual threat quarterback. They've got Zach Bertkey and Wyatt Dickey on the ground as well. Zach Bertkey's kind of taken more of that primary back role this year, but Wyatt Dickey has shown that he can step in and be a physical runner just like he was last year when they were more of a kind of a dual backfield. When I was talking about Wells about addressing that rushing attack, he said we just have to. One of the things we have to do is just pursue to the ball well. And I had talked to him later in the interview about that. And I thought that was funny because every photo gallery I see after we have photographers at their games, whenever you pull up a picture of their defense, it's just the opposing ball carrier, and you see like a minimum of 5 to 6 red or black jerseys of the Fort Loramie defenders around them. So him saying that being a key, that's I think going to be a strength for them because that's just something their defense has been really, really consistent with all year. Another thing that he mentioned was the size on their interior line. They've got 2 bigger defensive linemen and defensive tackles in the middle, and with the experience that New Bremen brought back on their offensive line, that's been a key for their rushing attack game this year. So Wells said the interior defensive line play of his team is going to be key in kind of maybe forcing maybe those runners where they want them to go. Passing wise for New Bremen, Dan Homan's their leading receiver. He's kind of a matchup issue. He's got 7 touchdowns on the year, by far the most on the Cardinals team, and he plays defensive lineman as well as tight end. But at the same time, he can line up. He doesn't have to line up just on the line. So I asked Coach Wells, what kind of challenges that prevents a guy who's very tall and can cause some matchup issues. And he said it's mainly just about obviously lining correctly, but just good communication in the secondary and making sure communicating where he is and then what you need to do after that. Another thing that is going to be a big key for this game, and I talked to Coach Wells about this earlier this season, was big plays. Last week he said that looking over the many analytics and different things, the way the league tracked things this year, one of the things that he noticed in the NFL was the team that won the big play battle generally won the game. And so that's kind of something, as Fort Loramie has had a very successful season, each week is kind of about fine-tuning these small things that they can improve on. Their defense has been dominant, but so each week I'm trying to see how can these guys get better week to week. And some of the times it's, okay, our defense is doing this very well, but now we want to force more big plays, force more turnovers. So when it came to the big play kind of situation, I brought that back up this week because one of the things that stood out to me was New Bremen had 35 plays of 20 plus more yards on the season. So they've shown they can be a big play team. And so I asked Coach Wells about that, and he said, the big thing is obviously pursuit to the football again. We have to have guys, they're going to probably make the first guy miss, but we have to have guys there or else they can do that continued damage. And the other thing there was kind of just tackling well. That comes with the pursuit to the football, but if you don't miss that first tackle, then that's not the issue. So he said tackling well is going to be a big key. That Cardinal defense, they're giving up just over 100 yards rushing and passing wise. They've got 22 turnovers forced. Got a great quote from head coach Spencer Wells here. He says, quote, "They've got a lot of good players. I'm impressed with their physicality up front. For us, it's playing good assignment football. We have to just make sure we're doing our job. It's easy when you get into these games to think you have to be Superman. You have to make this great throw or run, but we just have to focus on doing our job each play. At the end of the day, if you do that, you're in pretty good shape. That'll be key with us on offense. Just a good even keel. They'll make some plays. They're a good athletic team, but we just need to make sure we're always focused on winning the next play," end quote. I just asked him at the end, did I miss anything as far as keys to this game or things that you see as essential? And he said, it's just kind of pursuit to the football, the things that we kind of mentioned a couple of times already. And the other big thing was kind of staying on their blocks to the whistle. He said New Bremen is very good about that. And he said, whichever team does that, pursuit to the football, staying on their blocks and kind of just matching that physicality at the end of the game, he said, whichever team does that better, I think they're going to like where they're going to be. So next, kind of looking at it from the Cardinals side of the football, they're facing this 7-1 Fort Loramie team. Fort Loramie is averaging 49 points. They're giving up just 10 points a game. They're averaging just under 300 yards rushing and 172 yards to the air. It's a team that is similar to New Bremen in the fact that they can run the ball very well, and they've got multiple guys who can do it. They've got Colin Moore, who's a dual threat quarterback. He can run and pass. Nate Myers, an experienced guy in the backfield at running back, and Jacob Sherman, even a guy who's kind of shown on the season to kind of complement Meyer very well in that backfield for that rushing attack for Fort Loramie. And the thing that kind of stood out for me there was coming into the season, that was kind of one of the Fort Loramie's biggest questions is we're replacing a lot of offensive linemen. That kind of affects everything, what you want to do, passing game wise with pass protection and running wise. So to see that unit come as far as they have, averaging just under 300 rushing yards per game, that kind of definitely stood out to me. So I asked Coach Schmidt about that, their rushing attack, and I have a quote from him as well. He said, quote, it's a dual threat. Their quarterback, Colin Moore, is a good kid, thrower, runner. He's got a good size. That combo, anytime you got a kid with that size and speed, is dangerous. He says everything revolves around him, talking about Moore. He says you mentioned the Meyer kid, and then Logan Eilerman has come on at wide receiver. They got some really nice pieces around Colin Moore, and I think what makes them tough is that they do have multiple guys that can carry or catch the ball. It's hard to isolate and say, we're going to take this away or that away because they have so many different guys he can go to, end quote. So even with the success of their rushing attack, you got to worry about those 2 running backs in the backfield. Colin has been very patient and kind of, he'll go through his progression very quickly. If it's not there, he has no problem tucking and running, and he's ripped off a lot of big runs that I've seen this year. So, he said it revolves around more, and it's going to be kind of containing him, maybe trying to keep him in the pocket, force him to beat you with his arm, even though he's shown he can be a very effective thrower as well. So it'll just be an interesting chess match to see how the New Bremen defense adjusts to what Colin does throughout the game. Fort Loramie defense, I mean, it's been impressive. They're giving up just 91 yards on the ground and then I think 54 yards to the air. The defense has 12 interceptions. I had talked to Chris Schmidt about it, and he said, we're not going to try to reinvent the wheel at this point in the season. We got to stick with what we can do too. We're going to kind of rely on some of our athleticism and speed, and use our weapons and use what we've done all year. The interesting thing I said, he's looking at these 2 teams, you mentioned their proximity, how close they are, and he said, we haven't really played them in the time he's been there as head coach. They've scrimmaged, they played 7-on-7s, but they haven't played a game. But he said this week has the feeling of a rival week. The kids are really excited to get there and go, and he said he attributed it to the proximity. And the other thing he says was just kind of some of the other sports like volleyball, 2 top Division IV powers, and how that kind of formed a little bit of a rivalry there. So he said even though they haven't played each other, it's got that feeling of a rival week-esque type game. So it'll just be really interesting to see these 2 teams match up because Fort Loramie has run through their conference, and the cross county conference, and New Bremen has really come on these past couple of years. 2 great years, and this year that team has really impressed me with their ability to kind of compete with their two big losses they have against the 2 top teams in the MAC and Coldwater and Marion local. Yep. And then they've ended the season playing as well as they have. So it should be a great matchup for Friday.
Yeah. We've seen plenty of times, it seemed like every season it was Fort Loramie and Minster to open the season, and then they would play each other in the postseason, and Minster always got the plus side of those matchups. So, Fort Loramie now is a little bit further away by like 3 miles, and we'll play New Bremen, another MAC team. So we'll see how they handle, yet another MAC team.
Yeah.
And, you bring up a good point about the rivalry. I remember taking pictures of the 7-on-7s and the scrimmage one year they had against Fort Loramie. But volleyball, they are a rivalry. If they were to win Thursday, they'll probably play each other in the regionals again. In volleyball, they played each other in the state final last year in volleyball.
Yep.
Basketball, obviously, boys and girls, they play each other. And then baseball and softball, they play each other. So it is pretty crazy, and then you don't see them that much in football. So it's kind of an interesting side of that rivalry.
Yeah, still got that feel to it despite them not playing.
Yeah,
for sure.
And that's pretty cool. You go through all these teams, you go through all these postseasons and the brackets, and you come back and you play teams that are really close to each other, and they still have that rivalry feel. Like you never lose that. Whether it's in the regular season, the postseason, it's all like right there.
And I think that just speaks to the level of competition of the schools and that we're in. Me being new to the area, I wasn't completely aware of the prowess of the MAC and some of these teams around, just in this area of how competitive they were across not just football but just all sports. And then you just mentioned it there, how many of these schools play each other, and just the level of competition is great. So when it gets to the postseason, it's even more fun to see kind of all these communities just rally around each other and their teams. It's high level competition. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so that will wrap up week 10 of the Inside the Huddle preview. I'm Jake Dowling from the Evening Leader. Make sure you check out our Inside the Huddle print edition. We'll have a story on the New Bremen game as well as St. Mary's girls soccer tonight, and then also the Minster Community Post and all their coverage as well throughout the week. We'll see you next week. Take care.